Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our last session, a paper session for today. We will be having, for this conference actually, we will be having more fun workshops and a closing plenary session tomorrow, but this is the last paper session. Welcome, everyone. So this session is international alliances and individual efforts. We will have 4 papers, which will all be presented in about 15 minutes. And then we will have at the end half an hour for questions and answers. I encourage you all, if you have any questions for the presenters, to please put your questions in the Q&A function and not in the chat. So I'll be able to moderate that at the end. I am currently in quarantine in Korea, and it's been such a warm, lovely conference to be attending for these 2 days. That's giving me structure. And I've been so happy seeing all your faces again and participating in the workshops and listening to the amazing papers. So I'm very happy to be joining you. So we will start today with the first paper by Dr. Ying Shou. Dr. Shou is a research fellow at the Religion and Globalization Cluster at the Asia Research Institute, National University of Singapore. She obtained her PhD from the Department of Chinese Studies in NUS. She has published works on women and gender in Chinese Buddhism, women's religious networks, Chinese diaspora, and Chinese religious texts. She is currently leading a research project titled Mapping Female Religious Heritage in Singapore, Chinese female temples as sites of regional sociocultural linkages, 19th century to the present, funded by the National Heritage Board of Singapore. Welcome, Dr. Shou. Please go ahead and share your slides.
Thank you, Lina. Hello, everyone. I'm Ying. Greetings from Singapore and very good afternoon here. It is a great pleasure for me to participate in the Sangyatita conference for the very first time. And I'm truly impressed by how well organized the event is, and I look forward to joining the last 2 days' activities and workshops. I'll share screen now. Maybe I first spend a few minutes talking about the background of this research. I have been studying Buddhist women for a few years now. I was trained as a historian, major in late imperial Chinese history, and my research method was primarily about reading text. So it was a time during my PhD studies I came across a private collection of Chinese religious scriptures printed in China but republished in Penang in the late 19th century. So what's interesting about these texts is that they appear very Buddhist in essence, and they are stored in Buddhist temples, but at the same time, there are a lot of syncretic content advocating the unity of Chinese 3 teachings of Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. Many of these texts were written by lay Buddhists with female readers in mind as a retelling of Buddhist stories, mostly in the form of hagiography. For instance, many of these stories are about Guan Yin, the goddess of mercy, or Avalokiteshvara in the original form. They recounted how Bodhisattva Guan Yin was born as a princess in China and how she met through all the difficult times and challenges in order to pursue her Buddhist faith. Eventually, I became really interested in the social context that produced this text, and there it begins my multi-year journey of ethnography in many temples in Southeast Asia, in particular, those which I term as women-oriented temples, which were founded, chaired, or entirely managed by Buddhist women. So one point I'm trying to argue is that this Chinese Buddhist community are very diverse, and the boundary between religious traditions is rather fluid on the ground and has provided a fertile ground for interfaith dialogues and cross-faith interaction. Started by asking a very simple question: where are the Nüzhishi, the Chinese Buddhist householders, Chinese females Buddhist householders? Although their presence is so strong in Buddhist communities across mainland China, Taiwan, and across countries of Southeast Asia, and they participated actively in supporting the Sangha and spreading Dharma, why are they remain largely voiceless in Chinese Buddhism and their history remain peripheral and very much underdocumented? I'm showing here some photos I took in the temple during a Myanmar trip in 2019 before the pandemic kicks in. So in the picture, you can see that 4 women are wearing long-sleeve black robe known as haiqing in Chinese. and Buddhist prayer beads indicating their lay Buddhist identity. They are founders of a temple in Jeongwan and disciples of Master Chuan Fu, the Buddhist monk on the right here. This temple was established around 1950s, and from then all the residents are women. It served as a refuge to many marginalized women in the country, including abandoned daughters, outcasts, those unattached or unwanted female members of the family, to name a few. From the Dharma name of the monk and these vegetarian ladies, I think the temple was probably a branch of the Heyun branch of the Lingji school of Chan Buddhism, of which its headquarters is in Fujian, China. This temple today is still maintained as a women temple. The current abbess is a Buddhist nun born in Yunnan. This is a picture of Master Zihang and his female disciples. Master Zihang is a prominent Buddhist monk who was mentor to some very important Buddhist monasteries in Malaya. And these Buddhist ladies here are founders of a few Buddhist temples in Singapore, including the first and only women Buddhist college, the Singapore Girls Buddhist College in Singapore. And especially I would like to mention Venerable Hui Yuan, who you can see in the top right here, and was known as Lin Dajian Jushi before she received her Bhikṣunī ordination later in life at 65 years old under Master Yin Shun in Taiwan. And here we see some other Buddhist women and vegetarian nuns who are also founders of various Buddhist temples. Their piety network span across countries across the South China Sea, Guangdong, Xiamen, Philippines, Quanzhou, Taiwan, Singapore, Vietnam, and in other countries. So coming back to the study of Chinese Buddhism, there are of course more scholarship about eminent monks and nuns who built vast transnational or cross-regional networks, were instrumental in the globalization of modern Chinese Buddhism. They also play important roles in the building Buddhist academies and education. But in many of the cases, these female Buddhist householders or lay Buddhist women are rarely discussed. I think it is important for us to look beyond the grand narrative and monastic framework and take into consideration other fragmented but significant sources that could enable Buddhist women to have a voice in history. For example, we can make use of local gazetteers, private publications, scripture editions, newspaper archive, or even genealogy or tombstones to uncover stories, anecdotes, or private history that do not usually appear in the narrative of Buddhist history. Also important is the idea of how Buddhist family is formed and remodeled and how Chinese kinship is restructured along the migration of these Buddhist women. And of course, fieldwork and ethnography can inform us on the gendered networks that are centered around a wide range of women Buddhists. I'm showing that in many cases, Chinese temples are contested space for intersected Buddhisthood, in which women of different spiritual needs negotiate their identity and interact with each other. Through the intersection of temple history and female history, we bring women to the fore to study their agency and subjectivities and understand how they struggle within the constraints of a larger social and political context. I'm showing here an example of the alternative material source. This is a picture of a stone chair placed at the entrance of a Buddhist temple. What is special about this chair is that if we take a closer look at the names here, I'm sorry, they're all in Chinese, but you can see that they're actually all Chinese, all women's name. And many might have been Hokkien Peranakan women, the Nyonya, because the character Niang incorporate into their name. Hence, we know that this chair was donated to the temple by a group of Buddhist women. If we put it into context, we'll see that this is also a women-oriented Buddhist temple in Singapore. So the chair is one of the two placed by the entrance of the temple. And this temple, Tianyi Guanyin Tang, was founded in 1950s by a group of vegetarian nuns. And now the nuns are aged and they rented out the premise to a Theravada Buddhist Association, the Tisarana Buddhist Association, and they held regular Buddhist chanting sessions and Dharma talks. This is a two-story shophouse building in Singapore where the top floor was used as living area and bedrooms of the vegetarian nuns. In my several articles, I have written on vegetarian nuns and their unique religious identities in Southeast Asian Buddhist landscape. Among their many other social roles, I show that vegetarian nuns are an important group of Buddhist women, whereby their histories are largely forgotten today. In my research, I consider Buddhist women as comprising both ordained Buddhist Bhikshunis, household Buddhists, the Jushi, and those straddling in between lay and monastics, the vegetarian nuns. These social identities are largely overlapping, hence making the definition and research a bit tricky and sometimes can be quite confusing to many. There are different types of vegetarian nuns, of course. Some are more affiliated with Salvationist Chinese sectarian teaching rather than Buddhism. But in this presentation, I focus only on the Buddhist ones who are self-identified as Buddhist and they are temples members of the Buddhist Federation in Singapore. This group of vegetarian nuns are known as women of pure Buddhist faith, and they ventured overseas as early as late 19th century and were among the early pioneers of Chinese female immigration into Southeast Asia. I now switch my focus to talk about vegetarianism and how it can be seen as an embodied practice that binds Buddhist women together. Chinese Buddhists are vegetarian. This is of course not a news to many, but vegetarianism did not emerge in vacuum, and in many cases, Buddhist women are pioneers in promoting vegetarianism and localizing vegetarian recipes. Many Buddhist women are especially reputable for their cooking and have established restaurants alongside the vegetarian temples in Singapore. Kitchens are often domestic confine for Chinese housewives, but also an active space where women interact and exercise their subjectivities with creative culinary skills. Through food work, they involve in petty business to sustain temple operation. They become the cook and the teacher of Dharma and promoted the idea of dietary purity and social egalitarianism. This picture shows Venerable Ho, the founder of a Buddhist temple in Singapore, demonstrating her cooking technique to a group of women devotees in her cooking class. She was a long-time believer that vegetarian food and regular exercise deliver longevity. She is herself a perfect example. She passed away in her 90s. And she published her signature cookbook in 1998, perhaps the first ever detailed vegetarian cookbook in Singapore. She raised over 100,000 Singapore dollars from the sale of the cookbook to fund the expansion of her temple. Here I'm showing some of her signature dishes from the cookbook. The 6 roots of pure sensation refers to soya bean sprout with mixed vegetables, while the cultivating Dharma in Snow Mountain picture here refer to the steamed bean curd with white fungos. The packets of treasure is a more complicated dish. And in this dish, bean skirt skin was folded into rectangle shape and pinned its edges with 2 peaks. Little is known that Venerable Ho was actually a vegetarian nun. This is she before received her Bhikṣunī ordination. And she was a matriarch of a Buddhist family and had 5 adopted daughters. She was known in Singaporean history as a great dame of charity who did a lot of charity works to fund the poor and the needy. This picture is an example of a Buddhist family built under her leadership. Some of her adopted daughters later also become Buddhist nuns. Vegetarianism, of course, doesn't mean eating green only, but has a spiritual connotation. Here I'm showing a quote from the Precious Scroll of Mo Lian, reprinted in Bangkok, encouraging Buddhist women to become vegetarian. Quote, "When I first became a vegetarian, the Buddha was worried that I would not be steadfast in my practice. If I should one day breach the vegetarian prescription, the cultivation of 1,000 days will be lost in an instant." The entangled dynamic between vegetarian practice, Buddhist faith, and Chinese filial piety is also perfectly captured in a poem written by a Taiwan vegetarian nun, poet, and painter, Ms. Cai Zhichan. And here, vegetarianism is equal to one's integrity and commitment to Buddhism. In order to repay the debt of my parent, I devoted my life to religious training in solitude since I was 16 years old. A body 3 bears a body seat. A bright mirror is free from dust and does not require wiping. When I'm searching for the flavor of Chan, I found it to be similar to the flavor of the Tao, the way. After vegetable roots are consumed, you will be able to uncover the root of wisdom. I ask myself if I'm willing to lead this religious life in integrity, just as an ice pure heart in a jet. I'm truly confident of my commitment. This is my own translation to the original poem here. In the interest of time, I'm coming to the conclusion of this presentation. Chinese Buddhist sisterhood is a big topic. I have merely scratched the surface in this short presentation. I try to show that women have more exertive participation in Chinese Buddhism than commonly assumed, and their practice of Buddhism is often diverse and suit their various social circumstances. I also show that we have to utilize a wide range of alternative sources to look into the agency of these women and how their Buddhist faith are materialized and can be further contextualized. Hence, by asking where are the Buddhist women, we study the intersection of gender, philanthropy, religious alliance, and social networks. And I argue that multiple modes of religious sisterhoods do exist outside the male-dominant Chinese Buddhist spaces and lineage association in Southeast Asia. There are many examples of the invisible and materialized linkages among Buddhist women, and from there we make sense of the impetus of their transnational alliances and cultural significance across South China Sea. So this is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any question in the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shaw. That's a fascinating ethnographic study, rich with a lot of material. I'm sure we'll have a very vivid Q&A session at the end. Thank you for that. I would like to encourage everyone, if you have any questions for Dr. Shaw, please type them in the Q&A section, not in the chat, and I will moderate that at the end of this panel. So our next speaker for now is Venerable Renru Shi. Venerable Renru is a PhD candidate in religious studies at Lancaster University. She received a bachelor's degree in law from the China University of Political Science and Law, a master's degree in Buddhist studies from the University of Hong Kong, and a master's degree in arts, applied Buddhist studies from the Nantian Institute of Higher Education in Australia. Venerable Renru's paper is titled A Case Study of Traveling Chinese Buddhist Nuns.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present my research about a case study of traveling nuns in contemporary China. The tradition of Buddhist monk traveling can be traced back to the Buddha's time. The Buddha himself left his family, walked into the forest, and became a wanderer. After he achieved enlightenment, he walked from south to north to beg alms, preaching and talking so that his teaching can be spread throughout India. In India, the life of a monk was more characteristic of traveling monks. India has about 3 rainy seasons. During the rainy season, monks would settle down in retreat and live in a monastery or a house provided by laymen. At other times, they would travel from place to place with simple bags and mantles and live wherever they go. After Buddhism was introduced to China in the early days, the life of monks in the beginning was unsettled, and they just traveled from place to place like the Indian monks. This tradition has been common since North and South Dynasty and became flourishing in the Tang Dynasty. In the Tang Dynasty, Chinese Buddhist monks started to build temples to settle down for permanent residence, which led to the establishment of Buddhist community. The monks who resided in and worked in a fixed temple are called resident monks. However, the traveling monks still existed. Later, the great Chan master Bai Zhang made the monastic rules for Chan monks. And in these rules, there were some regulations about the traveling monks, which means traveling was accepted and recognized as a way of Buddhist practice in Chinese Buddhism. In Chinese Buddhism, the concept of walking or traveling or wandering means that monks have no fixed living places and travel from place to place for self-cultivation or for better practice environment or for learning from a great master or for teaching others or for promoting Buddhism. These monks are called traveling monks, wandering monks, or the monks of cloud and water, which means that the monks travel from place to place, just like the cloud and water. In the traditions and monastic rules of Chinese Chan Buddhism, Guadan means take permanent residence, and they usually live in the meditation hall, while Anda means take temporary residence. They just live in the hall of cloud and water. If the traveling monks would like to apply to join the monastery for permanent residence, they can move from the hall of cloud and water to the meditation hall for permanent residence. Traveling monks are commonly males. However, according to the biographies of Buddhist nuns, female monks did not all stay in the monastery, but also went out and traveled in order to seek or promote the Dharma. For example, Hui Zhang from the Jing dynasty met robbers during her traveling. In the Southern Song dynasty, Hui Yu traveled south from Chang'an to Jingchu, giving lectures and Dharma talks. Fa Sheng from Suzhou City in Jiangsu Province traveled to the capital city, Nanjing, to learn meditation and Vinaya. Sen Duan from Jiangsu Province traveled south to the capital city. Sen Gai of the Northern Dynasty traveled to Jiankang in the south. De Le traveled to Shaoxing in Zhejiang Province. Therefore, from the time when Chinese nuns first appeared, they had the custom of traveling and wandering around, and this tradition has continued to today. The coexistence and co-development of resident monks and traveling monks is a long-term tradition of Chinese Buddhism. However, due to the politicization of the concept of Buddhist synodization, the government has strengthened its control over religion, leading to some new characteristics of the differences between them. Resident monks accepted by the monastery should report to the local Buddhist association and make a record at the religious affairs department of the local government. After that, they can get a certificate of Buddhist professionals. Compared to traveling monks who have only one certificate, which is the ordination certificate, Buddhist professionals have two certificates. One is the ordination certificate, and the other is the certificate of Buddhist professionals. Only those recorded Buddhist professionals, usually are resident monks, can take the management of the monastery and preside religious rituals or activities, while traveling monks usually have not the opportunity to join the management of the monastery or preside the religious activities of the monastery. Resident monks registered as Buddhist professionals can receive fixed monthly living allowance and medical insurance, pension insurance through the monastery, while traveling monks usually have not these opportunities. Resident monks travel out for Buddhist affairs or further study in and abroad. They should apply for the permission of the monastery and report to the local Buddhist association. Therefore, they represent the monastery and can receive financial support from the monastery or from Buddhist associations, while traveling monks cannot receive any financial support from the monastery or from Buddhist association. Through a Buddhist nun Miaofa's case, I am trying to explore the answers for these questions. 1. How to define traveling nuns in contemporary China. 2. What are the reasons inspiring them to travel? 3. How do traveling nuns keep the Buddhist practice? 4. How do traveling nuns earn their livings? 5. How do traveling nuns interact with Buddhist organizations? According to the new characteristics, I want to define traveling nuns as independent nuns. They have no affiliated monastery, no fixed living allowance, no endorsement of the religious identity. They don't belong to nor work for any religious group, but individually travel from place to place, from this monastery to that monastery, study and practice by themselves, make a living by themselves. If they go abroad for visiting holy places or higher education, they have to prepare the money by themselves. What are the reasons for Buddhist nuns to travel? Reason 1. Master's death. After divorce, Miaofa has been always living alone. So when a Buddhist nun suggested her to become a Buddhist nun, she immediately agreed without any hesitation. And with the help of the Buddhist nun, Miaofa shaved her head and moved into a monastery. Soon after, the master was arrested and imprisoned, and the Sangha was designated by the government as an evil cult. So the master soon died in prison, and Miaofa had to leave them to find a new master. Reason 2. No Dharma teaching. Miaofa moved to a new nunnery in another province. She worked very hard in the nunnery, and she wanted to learn something from the nunnery. However, the manager of the nunnery was very busy with her own business. So even she worked very hard and stayed in the nunnery for a long time, she still felt that she could learn nothing from the nunnery, so she made the decision to leave. Reason 3. Go abroad for Dharma seeking. Miaofa moved into a much bigger monastery managed by a powerful monk. She received 1,000 yuan a month from the monastery, but they had to buy everything themselves, including daily food. Later, some friends proposed her to visit India for a short-term pilgrim, and she felt happy to join the group to visit India, and stayed in India to learn and practice spiritual meditation for a period. Reason 4. After returning to China from India, Miaofa was invited to take charge of a small temple, which is located in the same province of her hometown. So she had to retake the 3-platform precept in order to get a new ordination certificate and a record at the local Buddhist association. So she went to another temple and asked for another abbot to receive her as his disciple and write a recommendation letter for her to retake the 3-platform precept. Reason 5. As a manager, Miaofa decided to spend all her rest life in the small temple, so she worked extremely hard there and almost donated all her personal property to the small temple. However, the local Buddhist association and lay followers were still unsatisfied with her because they thought she could not bring enough money to them. So they frequently came to scold, humiliate, and provoke her, and even intentionally make troubles and bring difficulties to her. At first, she thought she must bear all these difficulties, since she was a Buddhist nun. However, later, the troubles became increasingly frequent and serious. She could not bear anymore, so she had to leave. Reason 6. With the introduction and help of a friend in a bigger temple, Miaofa was admitted to study in a Buddhist college. However, after 1 year, they gradually found that the Buddhist college was controlled and sponsored by some businessmen who always tried to convince them that the Chinese government and the Communist Party were very bad to persecute religion. So they felt that it's really dangerous to oppose the government, and they were really unwilling to oppose the government. So they chose to drop out from the Buddhist college and leave the big temple. How do independent nuns keep the Buddhist practice? Miaofa said she has a very good intention to be a Buddhist nun. She does not care much about the external things or environment, but she just wants to achieve enlightened. However, she traveled to many places but failed to find a satisfied master to teach her. The only opportunity that she touched the Dhamma is when she visited India to learn and practice spiritual meditation. Although Miaofa has not found a satisfactory place for a stable life of Buddhist study and practice, her belief in Buddhism is still firm. She believes in the law of cause and effect, reincarnation, and the six paths of samsara, etc. Therefore, she always insists on her daily chanting, vegetarianism, keeping single, wearing monastic robes, and she also tries her best to donate charity, release animals, do good deeds as possible as she can, so that to accumulate virtue. Miaofa also does not care if she can get a monastery endorsement to become a Buddhist professional or find a good place to live in. She gradually realized that Buddhist practice is more about the transformation of spiritual realm and life values, rather than the external identity and certification. So actually, she has achieved a fundamental transformation from an unbeliever of Buddhism to a firm believer of Buddhism. How do traveling nuns earn their livings? When they live in the monastery, they can receive a monthly living allowance from the nunnery. If they do not receive this, they can rely on their own personal retirement pension. Otherwise, they can receive support from the lay followers. This is based on the personal relationships with the lay followers. Also, they can work as part-time and do some self-support activities, which is allowed by the Chinese law and encouraged by national religious policies. Buddhist organizations usually are Buddhist associations, Buddhist monastery, and Buddhist colleges. Traveling nuns usually have no direct interaction with Buddhist associations because they just do the interaction indirectly through the monastery, so they have more contact with the monastery and rely on the monastery to endorse them to apply for full ordination or for other application. But traveling nuns also can enter into Buddhist college if they want to. Traveling is a long-term tradition of Chinese Buddhism. Traveling nuns can be defined as independent nuns. Through the case of Miaofa, it's clear that there are many reasons for them to travel. They have to rely on themselves to support their life. And they have no direct interaction with Buddhist associations. Usually they rely on a monastery to endorse them to apply for full ordination, but they can enter into the Buddhist college.
Great, thank you very much, Reverend Renru. That was a very interesting presentation, and I really look forward to the Q&A to ask a few questions. And please, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A section. So our third speaker for today is Dr. Jeongwan Sunim. Jeongwan Sunim entered the nunhood as a novice in 2000 and was fully ordained in 2007 in the Jogye Order of Korean Buddhism. She received her doctorate from Dongguk University in 2015 and is now a research professor at Dongguk University in the field of East Asian Buddhism. Jeongwan Sunim's paper is titled Bhikṣunī leadership in contemporary Korea, Bhikṣunī Master Inhong, 1908 to 1997.
Thank you very much, Lina, for your kind introduction. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Jeongwan Sunim, and from South Korea with Dongguk University. I'm honored to give this presentation today. I would like to be heard on the following points that I make: leadership of Bhikṣunī in contemporary Korea, focusing on Master Inhong Sunim. Okay. Yeah. To help you get started, I'm here today to examine leadership with reference to Buddhist practice, and we'll cover the process in which the leadership is finally practiced to all people. It would be a more fundamental evaluation of a Buddhist nun to see Master Inhong Sunim as a Sun Master devotee to Hwadu for her entire life. I look at Inhong Sunim's practices from the perspective of Max Weber's theory of charismatic leadership. Lina, please next. Yeah. To help you get, this talk is designed to, from Bhiksuni Sangha's point of view, Inhong Sunim's practice of leadership created following of the monks, including Bhikshunis, in the Buddhist purification movement of Jeongwan order during the 1960s. In contrast, from the Buddhist Sangha's point of view, her leadership provided motivation for her followers to save all saint beings and the world they live in below. In that rebuilding of Seongnam-sa led the followers to study the essence of life. Seongnam-sa is located on Mountain Gaji in South Gyeongsang province. It was built about 1,200 years ago, but it was completely destroyed during the Korean War. So it became a nunnery when Venerable Inhong Sunim was appointed an abbess in 1957. And she repaired and construction work began. Inhong Sunim had left home for the monastery at the mature age of 33. And she practiced under the guidance of Bhikshu Hanam and Songchol, and became a leading Sun Master for Korean nuns. She earned her title. Sometimes she was called the Tiger of Gaji Mountain for her rigorous and strict teaching style. When she arrived at Seongnam-sa, the roof of the main hall needed major repairs, and other buildings had rotten floors. Yep. Sorry for that. The temple, the Seongnam-sa temple was great depth and did not own any land. So in 1957, she built a meditation hall called Jeongju Seonwon and established temple at the Sun Center. This meditation hall hosted a 3-year retreat from 1962 to 1999. And she also constructed the Simgeongdang Seonwon, the meditation hall was built for advanced practitioners in 1963. And then she built the Geumdang Seonwon to accommodate the increased number of Sun practitioners in 1995. And Seongnam-sa was designated as a special Bhikṣunī temple for sun meditation by the Joge order. So, sorry, where is the, yeah. Sorry for that. Today's talk is designed to, from Bhiksuni Sangha's point of view, her leadership, and the other, in contrast from the Buddhist Sangha's point of view, her leaders provide motivation for followers. Yeah, and this will discuss these points in further detail, but Lina, next, please next. I will skip discuss these points in, I will skip theoretical background as a result of time to begin with Inhong Sunim's practice in factors that led to her leadership. Yeah. Lina, next, please. Sorry for the, yeah. Here we will pay particular attention to how Inhong Sunim's own practice styles could affect the formation of leadership on people rather than discussing what effects they bring to people as a Buddhist practice. Buddhist practices vary widely and different opinions exist for the effectiveness of each practice style. For this reason, the scope of this presentation will not focus on the effects of Buddhist practice styles, but on how Inhong Sunim's practice style impacts leadership formation. Let me begin by Changjabura, constantly sitting without lying down. Lina, please next. Yeah. Sorry, the former slide. Yeah. Changjabura is a practice style wherein one is sitting upright and never lying down. In that, it can be seen as an expression of the will devoted to never comfortable lie down without a break until one reaches enlightenment. Inhong Sunim's Changjabura's this practice during 100 days, and this practice serves as a condition that leads people to achieve charisma as a religious leader. You know, charisma is a theological terminology that Max Weber, a German sociologist, proposed in the 1920s. Back then, while Weber accepted the original definition of charisma, divine gift from the God or the gracious gift, he argued that charisma is attributed to the leader when a colleague or subordinate acknowledges that the leader has exceptional ability. Max Weber thought that charismatic leaders are mysterious and narcissistic with solutions to save people in crisis and an ability to attract people, but he thought charisma is manifested only when people witness a specific individual with a special attribute to acknowledge that the individual, sorry, I skipped the line. I'm very sorry, I read again. Max Weber thought that charismatic leaders are mysterious and narcissistic with solutions to save people in crisis and an ability to attract people. But he thought charisma is manifested only when people witness a specific individual with a special attribute to acknowledge that the individual possesses supernatural and superhuman ability. His theory of charisma was passed down to the Neo-Weberian school after mid-1970s, wherein charismatic leadership means to be accepted by the followers based on their perception of the leader's unique and inborn great attribution, as opposed to genetics or personalities. For ordinary people who normally have difficulty sitting meditation, even for an hour, practices that involve never lying down are enough to be perceived as a supernatural and superhuman ability. So it can be argued that Inhong Sunim's constantly sitting down without lying. Yep. Sorry, I skipped that. Yeah, that was a factor that formed the charisma in people. The process of charisma formation by the means of 장자부라 can be supported by some scholars that attributive theory of charismatic leadership. This theory is also based on the premise that followers attribute charisma to the leader based on their observation of the leader's actions. Leaders that engage in self-sacrifice and take risks to accomplish their vision, and those who do not hesitate to take actions that may cause them to pay dearly, are likely to be perceived as charismatic leadership. Inhong Sunim's vision was enlightenment, and the willingness to attempt to achieve that vision to the extent that one is risking death is sufficient to be perceived as charismatic. And next, please. Yeah. Lina, next, please. Yeah. Let me move on by keeping the rules and the pure monastic codes that sanghas must follow. This is because in a society where there is a widespread perception that subordinates follow discipline and rules, but superiors or seniors do not have to follow them. Those who step forward to follow large and small rules can be regarded as role models of leadership. And next, please. Whoa. Yeah. And next is practice of Hwajoseon for all her life. Some master Inhong Sunim used as a means of practice is a shortcut to realize the essence of human beings, and the formation of its leadership can be explained by transformational leadership theory. Some scholars believe that leadership formation is carried out in either the form of transformational leadership or transactional leadership. Transformational leadership transformed the inner nature of human beings by attributing humanism, peace, equality, and freedom to the leaders, while transactional leadership is the exchange of leadership and the following by providing material and secular remuneration and status. To put it another way, transformational leadership includes changing the human beings' inner nature by means of stimulating their higher order desires. In accordance with this, practitioners who practice Hwajoseon accomplish the complete understanding of life and the fundamental truth of birth and life can be said to possess a certain level of capacity to form a transformational leadership. In addition, some scholars put forward the notion of charisma, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration as components of transformational leadership. Inhong Sunim's search for truth and her encouragement of Buddhist sanghas to do the same is a hwadu that satisfies the criteria of intellectual stimulation. This is because it defines intellectual stimulation as the process of raising the subordinate awareness and encouragement them to view the problem from the new angle. And hwadu is extraordinary language that goes beyond ordinary languages. Next, please. The practice of constantly sitting without lying down and keeping the rule and practicing Hwadu are not uniquely practiced by Inhong Sunim. However, it is reasonable to assume that Inhong Sunim was capable of securing the level of charismatic leadership achieved by revered Buddhist teachers, since she carried out constant practice as such, which is not achievable by ordinary people. That being said, she seems to have secure traditional and legal rational authority, as she was appointed to be in the position as the president of the Bhiksuni Association, where only a small number of Buddhist teachers could ascend. This is to say, being in the position of president of the Bhikṣunī Association seems to have enabled her to form leadership like no others could, by granting her traditional and legal rational authority in addition to charisma resulting from the practices of other revered Bhikṣunī teachers. The leadership formation in the positions of president of the Bhikṣunī Association needs to be adjusted from the perspective of pure charisma as well as routinized charisma. Pure charisma is leadership formed out the ideal forms of charisma described. Leadership formed by charismatic authority is due to an individual's extraordinary attribute or ability. Pure charisma is thus a leadership formed by charismatic authority. Among the ideal forms of charisma mentioned Max Weber, and is due to the outstanding ability and attributes of an individual. In contrast, routinized charisma is a leadership formed by traditional authority and legal rational authority, of which charisma is attributed to status, role, object, or symbol in the death of the leader who formed pure charisma. From the perspective of pure charisma and routinized charisma, the position of president of the Bhikṣunī Association is an example of routinized charisma. However, the charismatic element vanished in the process of routinization. This is because after being separated from the leader's personality, the charismatic element manifests in the object institutional structure, and the leader with the new authority exercise a different kind of authority by means of institutionally recognized state or position. The legitimacy of the new tradition, the symbols system, and the institutional structures serve as the foundation to strengthen social system and tradition. This is all because of their connection with the charismatic leader. For the time, I'd like to finish this talk. I tried to analyze Max Weber's theory of charisma by applying the theory to Inhong Sunim's practices and her elected position as the president of Korean Bhikṣunī Association. In other words, this will look at how the practices and positions facilitate the formation of a charismatic leadership among groups of Buddhists. In particular, the charisma from the position will be validated through a comparative analysis of pure charisma and routinized charisma. I have to skip the following part. Inhong Sunim's leadership provided motivation for her followers to save all thinking beings and the world to live in below, in that rebuilding of Seongnam-sa, and her leadership had an effect on Korean Bhikshunis during the Buddhist purification movement of the Jogaewon in 1960s. If I had another chance, I'll present about that next time. Yeah, perhaps I should close here. Thank you very much for your attention. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Jeongwan Sunim. Very, very important research on Inhong Sunim's leadership and history. Thank you for your presentation. We will now move to the final paper for this panel with Dr. Venita Tanusuwito. Venita Tanusuwito is a dentist working at a hospital in Jakarta. She is a member of the Indonesian Buddhist Women Fellowship. She is interested in issues surrounding Buddhist women around the world, albeit writing about Buddhist women in Indonesia, especially the monastic. She aspires to tell the story of the development of women Buddhist communities in Indonesia. Before we start this last paper, I would like to encourage anyone who has any questions or comments for the speakers to please put your questions in the Q&A function so we can have a discussion at the end. Over to you, Dr. Tanusuwito.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the Sakyadhita Forum for allowing me to participate as the speaker at this forum. This is the second opportunity for me to speak here at this forum. Okay, I would like to share screen first. Okay, my topic here is a new era of women monastic in Indonesia. Okay, let's start. Well, we all know that the issues that surrounding Bhikshunis. I move it first because I cannot read. Sorry, I cannot read the writings. Okay, in 1989, actually, there are 3 Bhikshunis in Indonesia who have been ordained in Theravada tradition. I'll go back first. The issues that surrounding Bhikshunis who have received ordination in the Theravada tradition are always interesting to observe. We all know, of course, but because different from our sisters in the Mahayana tradition, women who want to be ordained in the Theravada tradition have been known to have received accepted rejection from a number of Theravada bhikkhus, including in Indonesia too. Okay, start. Now, actually, we have known that although internationally we have known that in 1996 there is a Bhikkhuni ordination at Sarnath, which marked the revival of the Theravada Bhikkhuni ordination, and it's in 2021 now we have marked the 25th anniversary of it. But actually in 1989 in Indonesia there have been 3 Bhikkhunis who have been ordained in Theravada tradition. These Bhikkhunis were now below the Indonesian Budayana Sangha Council. In Indonesia too, some people have claimed that actually the lineage of Theravada Bhikkhunis in Indonesia have bounced back through one Indonesia's first Bhikkhuni ordination in 2015, but actually 6 years before it, in 1989, there has been a Theravada Bhikkhunis ordination. Now this gave historical proof that the lineage of Theravada Bhikkhuni in Indonesia actually had been revived since 1989 and not 2015. It's an interesting fact, okay? And then in 2012, also before 2015, there are already 4 Indonesian seminaries, 10 precepts practitioners, just like Nechis, yeah, who are ordinated within the Theravada tradition in Sri Lanka. I want to state the name here. It is Bhikkhuni Dhammacharini, Bhikkhuni Pitacharini, Bhikkhuni Siriwadanu, and Bhikkhuni. Okay, now this ordination is historical because after a long vacuum since 1989, then these 4 Bhikkhunis are the first Bhikkhunis within Indonesia Indonesian Buddhist Sangha Council that have been ordained in Theravada tradition abroad. So before, in 1989, those 3 Bhikshunis were ordained in Indonesia, but these 4 Bhikshunis were ordained abroad in Sri Lanka. Now, maybe you want to know why the reason that there have been recognition in Indonesia about these Theravada Bhikshunis, apart from the problems that have been going on abroad, also in Thailand and other countries. But in Indonesia, Indonesian Buddhist Sangha Council, they have recognized the ordination of women in Theravada tradition. The first reason for the Sangha Council, Bhikkhuni ordination in Theravada tradition is not considered a problem, because the role of Buddhist women has existed since a long time ago, since Buddhism flourished in Indonesia during the Sriwijaya dynasty. That is from the 8th till the 12th century. This dynasty that have built the Borobudur monument in Java. Second reason, there is a need to have representative of Bhikkhunis and Theravada tradition too within the Indonesian Buddhist Sangha Council, because in the council there has been Bhikshunis from the Mahayan tradition, so they feel that they feel that they have to provide the space too for the Bhikkhunis from the Theravada tradition, and also maybe later in the future from the Tantrayana tradition too. Now, the third reason, the Sangha Council believe that it is the right of every woman to choose in which tradition she wants to be ordinated. So there is no specific rule in which they have to choose to be ordinated, but they can choose actually. This Buddhist Sangha Council always encourages women to practice not simply as Atasilani or Anagarini, but we encourage them to practice as fully ordinated Bhikkhunis and Bhikṣunīs, so they can practice well, so they can realize the utmost potential of spiritual attainment, just like bhikkhus and bhikshus. And since there has been a lot of Mahayana Bhikṣunīs, then Indonesian Buddhist Sangha Council will also want to provide space for Theravada Bhikkhunis. Now there is the fourth reason, and this is, I think, the most important reason for us, because in Indonesia, it's different from the other country. There are some parts of the country, some provinces, with a lot of Buddhist people who favor Pali chanting, especially in Central Java and East Java, where they are not quite familiar with the Sanskrit text, so they prefer to chant in Pali. They're not fluent in Chinese too, and for generations, they have familiar to chant in Pali. So this correlates to with monastics and Theravada tradition. So there's a need actually among the lay people, that they want these bhikkhus and bhikkhunis from the Theravada tradition. Okay, the fifth reason, Indonesia is actually a big country. I've read once in one article that Indonesia is one of the country with the that's got the fifth biggest population of Buddhist people. Yeah. So I read here that 0.7% of the population are Buddhist. Yeah, there is almost 1 million people, and more than 50% of them are women. So in Indonesia, Buddhist women play big roles in the Buddhist society, and Buddhist women have many activities in and outside the monastery, not only in the monasteries, but also outside the monastery. I'll show you a few pictures later. Such number of Buddhist women need bhikkhunis and bhikshunis to help them learn the Dharma, especially to accompany them with their activities and to support them throughout all the difficulties that women might face. Because in some problem, bhikkhus and bhikshus cannot help them, because we know that women have some problems that only women can approach and do the help better than men. Okay, so show you. Here I show you a few pictures. This is from the wait. This is the picture of one local Indonesian Buddhist women organization in Central Java. They held a 2-day bazaar, like a market. Bazaar is a market where they sell cheap products such as rice and sugars and cooking oil to provide for the people necessities. As you see here, there's also non-Buddhist attendee to the market, and it shows the tolerances that happen in Indonesia. Here we see Ayah Samodana, Bhikkhuni Samodana, and she is here because she supports this activity held by the Indonesian Buddhist Women Organization. So she's here to show her support. Okay, next. Now, actually, the ordination of the Theravada Bhikkhunis, we feel, the council feel that this really goes along with what the Buddha have done a long time ago. When Buddha allowed the bhikkhus to ordain women as bhikkhunis, because at the time, Saha Bhikkhuni was not well improved as yet. So at the time, he already allowed that bhikkhunis ordained only by bhikkhus. Now this is the story of Bhikkhuni Adakasi. I don't know whether the name is right or not, because this story I get from one of the bhikkhuni. So I tried to search for this story. It's very hard to find. So, but this story I get from one of the bhikkhunis. Now, the story of Bhikkhuni Adakasi at the time of Buddha. Then after the ordination by Saha Bhikkhuni, at the time Bhikkhuni Adakasi wanted to meet the Buddha. But at the time, she could not continue her journey due to unsafety reason, because there are robbers in the path of her journey. So the Buddha, he just sent a messenger telling her that the ordination had been fully made by him. So this show again that the Buddha himself, he never prohibit bhikkhunis from ordinated only because bhikkhunis or bhikkhus cannot ordain her. So all the rules are made actually for the convenience of at the time. So there is no actually a strict reason or strict rules about it. Now I would like to give my conclusion here about what's going on here now in Indonesia. Well, actually, there has been many progress in the development of Saha Bhikkhuni in Indonesia, and we are very delighted at that progress, where women not only can choose to be ordained in the Mahayana tradition. Actually, before women can only choose to be ordained in the Mahayana tradition, but now also in the Theravada tradition, and the council too, they have given facilities to the seminary who wants to be ordained in the Theravada tradition, and they also send them abroad to Sri Lanka to have further education, and that they can be well trained and also in spiritual attainment. There's a gender equality in the effort for spiritual attainment, and this is good. This is good because for bhikkhunis too, the importance of a bhikkhuni ordination, I also feel that they can confer on the same status as the bhikkhus. So there is a sense of equality and empowerment too for women. The ordination of these bhikkhunis now and in the future will become a good inspiration for all Indonesian women who desire to live their lives as samana and not as lay women. Indonesian Budayana Saha Council will continue to support the development of Saha Bhikṣunī as to strengthen the 4 pillars of Buddhism in Indonesia. As you know, the 4 pillars are the Saha Bhikkhus, Saha Bhikṣunī, and lay women and laymen. That is the 4 pillars of Buddhism in Indonesia. This progress will in the end help the progress of other Indonesian Buddhist women to maintain their role, as I have said before, because Indonesian Buddhist women have very special roles in the activities of many monasteries, not just to cook, but many other to help activities, to help seminars, and to empower other women, to empower women that live in the villages too. And this progress is good for the Buddhist development in Indonesia too. Thank you all. I hope this presentation is clear for everyone, and I'm looking forward if there is any questions from you all. May all beings be free and be free from suffering and be happy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Venita. So we will open the floor now to Q&A. Dr. Venita, may I ask you to please stop sharing your screen? And I would like to ask all the presenters to turn on their videos so we can have a discussion. There are a few questions that I will start with, and probably we will do it in the order of the presentations. And I also have some questions myself for the presenters. So let's start with the presentative questions for Dr. Shaw. Dr. Karma Lekshe Tsomo asking, is the Buddhist College for Women in Singapore still in operation? That's the first question. And the second question for Dr. Shaw is, are vegetarian nuns ordained like Buddhist nuns? Do they have precepts to follow? So we'll start, Dr. Cho, if you would like to answer these questions before we move to the next speaker.
Thank you, Lina. Thank you for the questions. Unfortunately, Buddhist College for Women is no longer in operation today. It was founded in 1962 by largely by Buddhist women, but it was short-lived and was forced to close down in 1975 due to a shortage of students. At that time, the flourishing development of Buddhist colleges in Taiwan attracted many Southeast Asian Buddhists to study there, later receiving full Buddhist ordination. And this has resulted in a falling enrollment in local Buddhist seminaries in Singapore. And for the second question, are vegetarian nuns ordained like Buddhist nuns? Do they have precepts to follow? And vegetarian nuns did not receive tonsure. And so they keep their hair unshaved, so they did not receive Bhikṣunī precepts, the Upas Sampada, according to the Vinaya Pitaka rules. And many of them practice 5 precepts, the Bodhisattva precepts, and live in convents under vows of celibacy. In certain regions, like in Fujian province in China, vegetarian nuns are widely accepted as monastics, but in other regions, such as in Singapore, they are in between monastic and lay Buddhist.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shaw. Your presentation is very interesting. You're leading very interesting research. Thank you for that. Venerable Renru, thank you for your presentation. This is a very important research that you are doing. Nuns who are traveling out of their temples and moving around are living very challenging lives, and your research sheds very important light on some of these stories. I was wondering if you have any statistics or information about what's the current numbers of percentage of nuns who are traveling at the moment around China, since your focus is on Chinese nuns. And what is the comparison that you think you could provide us between historically and now? Are there more nuns choosing to travel in that sense compared to historically, or has the number dropped?
Thank you for your question. These are very good questions. Actually, I'm trying to do this, but maybe I have not prepared well for this question, but I will continue to do this. Yeah, I know specific statistics, the numbers or the percentage, because I still need to do further research and field work. So I cannot give a clear number. But as I understand, most of the Buddhist monks and nuns are traveling monks. Here because it's very, very difficult for them to apply to be the Buddhist professionals. Yeah, because it's controlled by the Buddhist Association and the government. And yeah, the comparison between historical situation and the contemporary situation. Yeah, I am very sorry that I didn't do much about this. I will continue to do this. Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you very much, Renru. Very interesting research. Thank you for that. Jeongwan, Sunim, would you like to try to see if the audio is working?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry for that. And thank you for your good questions. And the first question is, it's very interesting, but I would like to say, Inhong S님's leadership, I previously said it about this, and Inhong Snim's leadership provided motivation for her all followers and disciples. It called to show Hawa Jungseng, to save all thin beings and world they live in below. And so she, after she practiced Hwaduseon, and then she moved to rebuilding Seongnam-sa as an abbess. So it showed her some aims and how can I say aims and conclusion for her practice of Hwaduseon. And other thing is her leadership has a very strong impact on Bhikshunis of Korea from the purification movement. It is really very impact. How can it's very impact event in Korean Buddhist history. So I think it this two motivation, to show motivation and her effect. That's 2 points based on her Buddhist practice, and then showed how we can help. How can we show our practice result to show her followers and her disciples. I heard she had her disciples around 300 Bhikshunis, and she have trained Bhikshunis as some practitioners in Seongnam-sa. Around it counted around 2,000 Bhikshunis. So I think it really show Hwaduseon and practice of Hwaduseon, how can save and help the people as the result of the her practice. And yeah, that's my answer of the first question. And the second is some studies have noted that women's strengths in various leadership issues, such as inclusion, power sharing, or caring for subordinates, and some studies said women will become better leaders than men, but I can find, but in my research, I can find to some different or some superiority between men and women, or Bhikkhu and Bhikṣunis. I can find two difference in the practice leadership or charismatic leadership. Yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you very much, Jeongwan Sunim. So now we'll move to Dr. Tanusuwito. Dr. Tanusuwito, there is one question from Cornelia Nili Lange, who's asking, Jakarta is mostly a Muslim country. How are relations with the Buddhist nuns and the Muslim communities? Are they interfaith organizations? If so, what are the activities? And then we had a comment earlier from Banjong Topimakwa, whose comment is the situation is very similar between Indonesia and Malaysia, multiracial and religious countries, and country culture and national language also very similar. Yeah, I think if you would like Dr. Venita to comment on these questions, that would be great.
Thank you very much, Cornelia Lange. Where are you from, Cornelia Lange? Okay, I just answer. Actually, there is no specific relationship between Buddhist nuns and Muslim community, but there is many relationship between the Saha Council, many Saha councils in Indonesia and the Muslim communities, of course, because in Indonesia, the interfaith relationship is very, very good at the moment. And there's also a relationship between all 6 religions in Indonesia, 6 government acknowledged religions in Indonesia. There's the Muslim, the Catholic, the Christian, Buddhist, the Hindus, and the Confucianism. Yeah, there are 6 recognized religions in Indonesia, and they are all in good terms at the moment. Yes, but if you ask whether there is a specific relationship between the Buddhist nuns community and Muslim communities, not yet. But because Buddhist nuns, Bhikkhunis and Bhikshunis, and they are all below the Saha Council, so they are all included in this relationship between the Saha Council and the Muslim Council. That's all I can say.
Dr. Tanusuwito, there's another question coming in from Dr. Diane Butler. Dr. Butler is asking, Dr. Tanusuwito, so interesting to hear you speak about the linguistic aspect of Buddhism in Indonesia. When I attended the annual Waisak Day ceremony at Candi Borobudur in 2006, the ethnic diversity of Indonesian attendees was far greater than I imagined. Aside from Pali, I have heard musical prayer songs in other languages. What is, in your sense, about Buddhism and the great linguistic diversity of Indonesia?
Thank you, Dr. Diane Butler. Actually, we remember that the Buddha himself has allowed that Buddhism can be delivered, can be spread around the world through each of our own language. It can be in India, in Pali, or in any other language. And in Indonesia, there is a community in Java, in Central Java, where they held chanting not in Pali but in Javanese. And there's also songs in Javanese, but these songs are Buddhist songs. So this is very interesting. I have attended several times their activities, their ceremonies, and it's very, very interesting to see that Buddhism can be taught in Javanese, not just in Pali. But this is once again not against the Buddha teachings, because the Buddha himself has allowed us to teach the Buddhism in our own language. Yes, and I'm glad that you attended that ceremony in 2006. Yeah, That is a good example of ethnic diversity and many ethnic tolerance in Indonesia. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Will that answer you?
Yes. Well, this is a great, actually, concluding comments for our panel. Thank you very much for all great 4 speakers and the interesting research that you are all doing. Thank you everyone for attending the last paper session for the Shakadita conference this year. Please do attend the workshops that are happening after this from 6 p.m. and the closing ceremony tomorrow morning and other workshops tomorrow morning as well. Thank you everyone. Thank you for the speakers and thank you for everyone who has been listening to us today.